Hi, thank you for watching. In this video we're going to look at how to print a string without including the special character here, this \n in Python. And what this \n is basically it's telling Python we want a new line break. Let's just start by looking at our print statement. Now this is a good one because it's probably the first bit of code that most of us ever wrote, certainly the first bit of code that I wrote in Python, which was a really basic print hello world statement. And if I execute that, yeah, there you go, I got the output displayed on my Jupyter notebook. It could be in the command line, but from the beginning of most of us, for most of us at least, the beginning of our Python journey was using a print statement to display an output. In terms of using strings, as we get to learn more with Python, we get to know all these special characters, and this \n, this new line break, is probably one of the most common special characters we use when formatting strings. I kind of like to think of it a bit as if I was using a word processing program. If I wanted a new line break, so hello, my name is Rakesh, and then I wanted to put a new line in here, I'd press my enter key so that the next bit of my string, my text, is displayed underneath. And that's the kind of the principle. So what this does is it tells Python it's the end of a line and we want the next thing to be on the next line. So formatting is really useful. Now there are times when we obviously need to do that, but there are other times when we don't. So what we're going to look at in this video is how to print a string without including this new line break in Python, and we're really going to focus on Python version 3 only. It's slightly different for Python version 2, but because the majority now are using Python version 3, we're going to focus on that. Now let's start by looking at how the print function itself interprets this new line, how it uses this \n. Now what happens is that by default it will add a new line break at the end of every print statement. So if I do this print statement, so this is the first line, so that's one print statement, and if I do my other print statement, now as you can see I haven't included any new line breaks here. They're two different print statements, and if I execute them they appear on two different lines. Now for me, from a purely logical point of view, this kind of makes sense because I have two independent print statements, so it makes sense for me that the output is printed as two separate lines in my interpreter. So whilst that shouldn't be a surprise, as you can see I haven't explicitly asked Python to do this, so there might be a time when I don't want this to happen. I need to keep two print statements, but I want the output to be printed on the same line. So we need to look at how this happens and why this happens, and the way we do that is by actually just looking at the syntax of the print function itself. Now to understand what the syntax or the default parameters of our print function are, what's great about Python is we just have to put this function, so we want help with print, and because it's one of the default functions, if we just put it in the help parameter and we execute it, we actually get to see the syntax or the different parameters that are in the print function by default. And again, this is by default, and the key thing I want to look at here for now is this one here. So just highlight that. So by default what Python says is every time it runs a print statement it has to end in this new line break. So it doesn't matter whether we specifically want it to happen or not, every time I run print the end will be a new line break. So that's really important for us to bear in mind. Let me just get rid of this so they have more space on the screen. So if I don't want a new line break, what I can do is I can actually change that end parameter to something else. So let's have a look at how we do that. So let's try running those two print statements again. Let me just copy them, it's probably going to be easier. So I got the same print statement as before, but this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it that for the end parameter, instead of a new line break, I want to change this \n that it defaulted to into nothing. So I'm just going to leave it blank. And if I run this, need a comma there. If I run this, as you can see, so what it's done is it's replaced the new line which we had over here, and it's replaced it with just nothing. So my output is all on one line. Yeah, so it's all on one line. So I've got rid of the new line, and this could be anything. I could put anything I wanted to in there. Let me put a space in so that it's nicely formatted. So I'm going to put a space in, run it again, and there you go. So you've got hello, this is the first line and this is the next. So by changing the default value of the end parameter from \n to whatever I want it to be, I can change my output so that the new line break isn't actually printed. So this is one way of printing our string without including this new line parameter, and it makes sense because we're changing the parameter. So instead of defaulting it to new line, we can put anything we want into it. Now the next thing we're going to look at is it's put down as the CIS Standout alternative, which is basically printing our string without using the print function. You're going to have to bear with me with this because it's not. It's a bit more complicated, but what we're going to do is actually bypass our print function, because what we're trying to do by using this print function is to display our string. So and we can actually do that without using print. Now if I just go back here to our definition, to the syntax or the parameters of the print function itself, just go back there, we can see this here. So file equal the system standout. So what this actually means, this std out actually stands for standard output pipe, and what this is saying is this is telling Python where it wants the output to be sent. So it's telling Python that in this instance we want the file to be sent to the default, which is our Jupyter interpreter. It could be our command line, could be whatever you're using, but this is basically saying to Python, when we run the print function, the output goes to the default interpreter that we're using automatically. Our string will go automatically to this default parameter. So we can actually use this without invoking the print function at all. Now the advantage of doing this is because we're bypassing the print function, it won't automatically insert this new line break every time we use it. There's no default parameter, so this end equals new line isn't there because we're not using the print function. The disadvantage is that we will have to import the CIS module before we can actually use it. So let's have a look at how we do this. Now let me just get rid of this again so we just can see everything properly. So I'm going to import the CIS module, and we're going to run our just run our print statements, or sorry, we're going to display this again using the CIS Standout. So we're going to write it. So what I want it to do is I want to write the string onto my my output, onto my terminal. So hello, this is the first line. Oops. And I'm going to do another statement directly underneath. And this is the next one. So if I now run this, hopefully, so I've imported the CIS module. I don't have to download it because it's built in, but I still have to import it, and I'm telling it to write my text, write my script onto my interpreter. Because I'm using the CIS Standout, there should not be any new lines here. So if I just run that, and there we go. So there you go. Hello, it's all on one line because I don't have the issue with the default end parameter. But the problem with this system, or this way of doing things, is one, it is more complicated, and two, I can't actually format this. The only way of me correctly formatting it would be to actually physically put a space in over there, and then it works. But obviously, it depends on the formatting of each individual string almost, and you would have to go through it string by string if you want your output properly formatted. So it is an alternative, but I question whether how effective it is, and it will really depend on what you're trying to achieve. So we've looked at how we can stop this new line \n being printed automatically when we use our print function. We want to print a string, but what happens if the new line character is actually contained within our string, but we don't want them to be printed? So let me give you an example. Let's just create a let's create a variable with a string in it. So we'll do hello, use the same text. This is the first line. And now I'm going to, there's my \n, and this is the next one. Okay, so that's my string, and if I now print the string, because I have my new line characters over here, these are the special characters, so hopefully now Python will know that this \n is the new line. There you go. So hello, this prints on 2 lines because I have my special new line characters here contained within the string. So what if I don't want this \n in there? Well, the best way and the most obvious way of doing this is to actually tell Python to replace these characters, and we can just use there's actually a replace method within Python, and it's a special string formatting method. Basically it's replace. So let's see how that works. So I'm going to replace, I want to replace my, within the variable a, which is my string, I want to replace all the instances of n with nothing. So over here, what I'm saying to Python is anywhere within this string here that it sees a \n, just replace it with nothing. And if I do that and execute it, oops, sorry, I need to print it first as well. So if I now print a, there you go. Hello, this is the first line, this next. So it comes on 1 line, and it knows, Python knows, it just has to replace. This is the only text it's looking for, and it's just looking for that. Sorry, that script, that bit of text within my script, and every time it sees that, it's just going to replace it with nothing. So that's a useful way of doing it. Now the other good thing about this replace method is it actually has another parameter which is called the count parameter, and that will allow us to specify how many times we want to replace the old substring with a new one. Let me just create some space over here. So there you go. So I hope it's a bit further up. So we can actually use this, because by default what will happen is if we don't put anything in the count parameter, it will replace all instances of the \n or whatever substring we've put in there with the substring we want it replaced by. But there might be times when we don't want all of them replaced. We might want just 1 or 2 or 3 of them replaced, depends on how many we've got. So let's try just doing another string variable. So this is the first line, and we'll do a \n, and this is the next one. Let's do \n again, and this is the next one. But I don't want this one. Oops, so that's my there's my string. Let's see if I print b, what happens. Oops, sorry, my imbalance. Oops, so you know what? Because let me first correct that, and this is because I've used this symbol to denote my string. I've included it in, so I can't do that. So I don't want this one. That should work now. There you go. So I've got 4 lines of. Let me put sorry, \n. So now I have my my string being printed across 1, 2, 3, 4 lines. Now supposing I didn't want it printed across 4 lines, I want it across 2 or 3. What I can do with the replace parameter is actually replace method is actually specify how many times I want that n in my string replaced. So in this example, let's have a look. So supposing we want to replace, we're going to replace our n with a space, but I only want to replace the first 2. So I've got one here, I've got 1 there, and I've got 1 there, so I've got 3. So I've got 3 lines. There's 1 over here, 2, 3, and I'm only going to replace 2. So in theory, it should change. So let's see what happens now if I print b. So what you can see has happened here. So instead of replacing all of them. It's only replaced the first 2 Newline breaks, and it's kept the third one. And if I change that back for my formatting, there you go. Obviously the replace method will not format it for me, and I can't specify I want the first 2 replaced with a space or just an empty character, or multiple spaces, wherever it is. So the thing to bear in mind obviously is that depending on how the string is formatted, the replace method, you can specify how many times you want our substring or our special character, in this instance is /n, replaced, but I can't specify on each occasion what I want it replaced with. It's a kind of a bulk replacement, but it does work effectively, as I hope you can see. So in this video we've looked at how to print our string without the new line, and whilst there are various reasons why we might be looking to do this, how we can stop this from happening really depends on whether the new line is part of our string or it's being invoked automatically through our print function. So if it's being invoked automatically, we want to stop it. We've seen that we can either change the default parameter of our print function, or we can effectively bypass our print function altogether. I think changing the default parameter is the most straightforward option, just because it's the CIS, the whole other way of doing it, the CIS Standout, seems a really complicated way of effectively achieving the same result. Now, when the new line is actually contained within our string, we've seen we can use the replace function to specify the new line characters and specify where we want it replaced with. The only issue, as I said, is that it doesn't give us the flexibility of specifying on each instance what we want to replace by, but we have seen that it does give us flexibility of how many times we want to replace it and what we want to replace it with. I hope you found this video interesting, and thank you very much for your time.